Welcome to the fourth breakout session of today. I hope you guys have had a good time with the rest of your sessions and enjoyed the panel and this morning's keynote as well. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Katrina Thurman and Lane Schoner. I'll be sharing with you on their presentation, Entirely Unproven Government Relations Strategies and Techniques. So a little bit about Katrina. So Katrina, originally from Southern California, has served the nonprofit human services sector across the US for over 20 years as an executive leader. With experience operating impactful social service programs in small rural towns and large urban centers, she brings a passion for breaking the cycle of poverty to her work every day. Katrina joined the Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona team for the second time in the fall of 2019 to help lead the launch of their first Excel Center. She holds a Master's of Applied Anthropology degree from the University of Maryland College Park and a bachelor's degree in intercultural communication and Russian language from Arizona State University. She has a decade of experience serving as CEO or COO for nonprofits in Northern California, serving vulnerable children, youth, and families. Now, Lane leads Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona's talented learning and development team as they create and deliver world-class professional and leadership learning experiences in support of GCNA's vision, mission, and strategic initiatives. Originally from Pennsylvania, Lane has been a part of the Goodwill movement for over 20 years. He served as the Senior Director of Leadership and Development for Goodwill Industries International Incorporated in the Washington, D.C. area before joining GCNA in 2017. Lane holds a doctorate in human and organizational learning, a master's in human resources development, and a bachelor's degree in history. Lane has always had a passion for helping others grow and develop. And with nothing else, I will pass it over to Lane and Katrina.
So hello, everybody, and welcome to the workshop. We're really excited to be here with you. We will fill you in on why the workshop is entitled Entirely Unproven Government Relations Strategies and Techniques in just a moment. Ultimately, we're just here to share with you a bit about our journey into the world of seeking and then securing government support for this amazing thing called the Excel Center. And I'm gonna jump right in here. You've already gotten my bio. You know, essentially I'm here at Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona for the second time. I was here in 03 to 08 and came back because of this incredibly exciting opportunity, as I see it, to do something that actually could break the cycle of poverty. You'll get to hear more about why that won't be happening right now. So if you look me up in the Goodwill Network, my new title is Executive Director of Grants for our organization, since I have a history in grant writing, and right now outside funding is going to be so critical. But the Excel Center is still where my heart is, for sure. Let me turn it over to my colleague. I was going to try to point to him, but I don't know where he is on the screen. So turn it over to Lane Schoner and let him introduce himself and give you a little bit of our history on the Excel Center project.
Hi, everybody. It's still morning here, but I'm guessing it's afternoon where most of you all are. It's nice to be here. As Katrina said, we, neither one of us have a hardcore background in any kind of public policy or kind of traditional education, but we've kind of pieced a lot of stuff together over our careers, and then both in our own ways found the Excel Center, thought it was amazing, and wound up in Arizona, where we were working hard and are still working hard to try to figure out a way to get this, as Katrina said, amazing model into place here. I think, you know, it's important to have a little background and context, but I don't want to take up all our time with that. So we'll give you the nickel explanation of how we got where we are in Arizona. Just a little bit more about me. That's the only part really that's relevant is I worked at GII for a long time, the national office, and I saw all of this kind of pop up, and I was connected with Jim McClellan, who was the former CEO in Indy, and I knew that they were starting some kind of education initiative, you know, 10, almost 15 years ago. And At the same time, I was starting my doctoral program and needed a place to do my research. So I really took a deep dive into not just the Excel Center, but really Indianapolis's whole journey. And there's faces on here that helped me with that research. And I wrote a dissertation about that. So if you want to read 180 pages about how Indianapolis came to have education stuff, let me know. But essentially,
it's worth every word. It's worth every word, every single page.
So essentially, the reason that's relevant is because I really got intrigued by the model. I'm not going to say I became an expert. It just seemed so cool, and the outcomes even 5-6 years ago when I was doing my data collection were so impressive that when I came to I came to Arizona, and I realized we were going after one of these. I was like, this is a huge bonus, and was really one of the reasons I decided to say, yeah, I'd love to move my family 3,000 miles from the DC area to the desert. So brief background: in 2017, we've had our first official kind of feasibility study. And before that, our CEO, Tim O'Neill, and Kent Kramer had talked a lot about, how would we get this model out here? But really 2017 was our first feasibility study. Indianapolis was amazing at that point and continues to be amazing, and said, yep, we think you can do this. You might need to do it differently than we did. So we tried. We launched a semi-formal effort, I will say, in 2019. We'll talk a little bit later about how important it is to get in early on some of this legislative stuff. So we were a little late to that one. We had a good push, but we didn't get it passed through the legislature. And then we tried again this year, and we had an amazing, I think, a great strategy, in large part to our great lobbyist who's actually on the call with us here. Hello, Jay. And, we were on pace. And then, like everybody else, we ran into the COVID thing, and they couldn't even figure out what to do with the regular budget, let alone make time to listen to our continuing argument for why they should fund students at an Excel Center. So here we sit. The reason that Katrina and I thought this might be a great opportunity to share was, I think we did some really kind of cool things, and we learned some stuff, and that's our main thing we want to pass on. We don't have the answers. We don't have the exact, we can tell you what worked for us, because I can tell you, I was one of those people that was really worried about how do you do all this legislative stuff. I like to understand the big picture and get all the little parts right, and you need help to do that. And I went from completely worried to, oh my gosh, I think we can actually do this thing. So that's a little bit about that. And you want to talk about anything more around that, Katrina, and then introduce the workbook, maybe?
Yeah, I think you summarized it really well. Essentially, we felt like we were on a roll, and we wanted to share kind of the different components of the role we were on, which really cover, as you see here on the slide, the relationships we built, the data that we used to help make the story as relevant as possible to our audience, the actions that we took. And then as somebody who is just relatively new to government work, and as Jay could attest, Jay's the lobbyist who's on the line with us, definitely nervous walking into the first, dozen or so meetings with legislators. I just want to end with a pep talk of kind of what I feel like are some of the lessons learned. And then, of course, questions and answers. We can probably try to take some along the way, and then anything else at the end, we're happy to do our best to answer them. Hopefully all of you received the email. I think it came from Katie a few days ago. We developed a short workbook just to help support you in your learning and listening in today's session. It's really just designed to give you a space for notes, ideas, anything that comes up, and to just give you a place to sort of think for a moment and pause on considering your organization's readiness to engage in the different types of activities that we think support a good government relations strategy. So with that, Lane, I think you are leading us off on this next slide about relationships.
Yes, and we're going to try to make this, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you there's like 100 activities in the next 45 minutes, but we're going to try to make it more conversational and less talking head. But so with that in mind, we don't have a lot of slides, so don't panic. But yes, as Katrina said, we kind of have these three big chunks. Like, what are the relationships you need? What research and learning do you need to do? And then how do those actually show up in behavior, in action? So from a relationship standpoint, I think, you know, Katrina's going to talk through this slide, but I cannot start the relationship piece without saying, and Katrina and I both agree with this, it looks like I'm preaching to the choir since there's a lot of Indianapolis folks here, but if you're not with the Indianapolis Goodwill and you haven't worked with their Excel Center team, the support we got from all of you, all of that team has been amazing. That was a big deal. I think also, just to reiterate kind of what we bring to the table is, we did all this in a very different climate with different kind of needs than what Indy was able to do or had to do to get theirs off the ground. And then, you know, just some conversation in a small group in a second here will kind of help quantify some of that for all of you. So Katrina, I'm going to turn it back to you for these. I'm working off my notes here. It says Katrina is next.
Thanks for following the script, Lane. He has a tendency to get off, he has a tendency to go a little off script sometimes. So for any of you that know him, you'll appreciate the script.
Very hard for me.
You know, I also wanted to take a minute. I think Trisha Martin is on, is in the room with us, in the Zoom room with us. And Trisha was the third leg to our stool internally at Goodwill. So thank you, Trisha, for everything you did to help make us get as far as we did with the Excel Center project. So you'll hear us say this a few times, and I could give, I'm going to go with 99% of the credit for the content of this presentation and any successes that we had along the way, really to our best-in-class lobbyist. So Jacob Rosie with the lobbying firm Veritas here in Arizona, he's just, not only is he an expert lobbyist, which I used to think was a bad word, and now have come to have great respect and care for that field of expertise. But he's also an expert in the education side of lobbying, which is an additional specialty that I'm not sure I would have considered before. Education, it turns out, is you know, at least in Arizona, can be a political, you know, hot football being tossed around with lots of different opinions and ideas. I'm sure every jurisdiction is different, but probably no jurisdiction where everybody completely agrees that that on how to approach education in your community. We have asked Jay to listen along today, and, you know, not put any pressure on him to be a presenter, but to listen and help us with Q&A at the end, or fill in any or all of the things that we might have missed. So I want to admit that we are very lucky as a relatively large Goodwill organization to have had the resources to have not only hired the lobbyist, but had the lobbyist working step by step with us the entire way. And I just want to encourage those of you that might be in smaller organizations, or where you don't really need the resource of a state level lobbyist, but you really just need to move the opinion of your school board, that there's ways to get either pro bono or very affordable guidance in government relations, and to help you design your strategy. And while they may not be, you know, there, you know, every single time you're walking in a door or picking up a phone, there are folks out there who are going to be as passionate about the Excel Center model as Jay was and is, and who would love to help you design your strategy, even if you have to go do all of the implementation of it alone. So I don't want you to think that even though we have the, you know, hire the lobbyist thing here, it could be hire, it could be pro bono. There's lots of different ways to accomplish that. Ultimately, what they're there to do, and what I think, if I look back on the entire strategy, what we gained the most from is the ability to thoroughly assess the political climate in ways that are deeper and more distinctive than what any of us as lay persons not interacting with government folk would ever consider. So all of those nuances in your area around, education, around charter schools, if that's your state's model, around the budget for education. And so really that, learning and knowing your political climate, however you can glean that information, has some incredible benefits to designing the rest of the entire strategy. So because I wasn't around yet at the time, I'm going to have Lane jump in here and talk about securing your legislative champion or champions.
Okay, yes, and those would be the next couple of bullets here, referring to both the political climate and the we're on the right relationship slide, right, Katrina? I can't see.
Are. Yep.
I got the Brady Bunch view over top of the slide. Sorry. This idea of what is it that you're after? It will help you drive who you need to help with. So I think that's important to mention here, right? Not every state, there are some states that you just need to, maybe it's just open a charter school and get support and go, and you don't have to change any laws, or you don't have to, we literally are having to work to change our state law. And that's a much different mountain to climb than getting people excited about it or getting something approved in an environment that already technically it's allowed, but maybe it just has never been done before. So I think that's important to clarify. I know Indianapolis, when they started, had some stuff they kind of just were okay with, and then somebody raised their hand and said, wait a minute, just because we don't have a cap on education for adults, maybe we are concerned about how much money. So they had a different experience, but still the government relations piece was important. So really understanding kind of what you need and why is great, and that's part of the climate. And in Arizona, Katrina optimistically talks about it as turning purple. There's a lot of red, coming from the DC area. I was like, okay, everybody out here has a giant cinder block wall around their house. It is very like, you don't come mess with my stuff unless I invite you. So it's just a different place. I just as a person who's only been here 3 years, I can feel a lot of different things in the business and the social and the economic and the educational climate. But we had, with the Excel Center, a great tool because it works for both sides of the world, as I'm sure you all know. Whether you're a conservative or whether you're, come more left-leaning, you can make great arguments and get great support. So a lot of this work is about doing that. In our case, we identified a state house member, Miss Udall. Michelle Udall, I think, is she's got a passion for education. She chairs the House Education Committee. So she was not only passionate about helping us sponsor the bill, she was also in a position within the legislature to help us get airtime with that committee, and that was super helpful. So the bipartisan approach I already mentioned, we had a lot of great support from the other side of the aisle. I think both halves of that education committee, we ended up with some really strong supporters. So understanding who to pick to be that person that's willing to carry the flag for you within the legislative body. In our case, we needed a strong one because we actually had to write legislation and get it passed. You might not have to do that, but that strong voice from that has the relationships and the experience inside, even if it's a city council, all the way up to the state government is helpful. And I think we got lucky, and that Miss Udall was super passionate about it the first time, and none of that wavered the second time around when we came back in 2019. We're hopeful that once we get in post-COVID land and we're ready to ramp up again, that she will also be part of that. But I would have to say, and Jay and Katrina might have other thoughts they want to share later, but I would have to say that just the year and a half we worked hard on this, we actually now have a lot of other people that know about it, that know what we're trying to do, and that if if we needed a different person to be our champion, we might be able to do that. So that's the climate and legislative champions. And then it goes beyond just the one person. And Katrina, if you want to talk about how that kind of grows across other people in the legislature and kind of political area.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is another thing that I feel like, Jay was really pivotal for us in learning. In my naivete, I would have thought that if you were working on legislative change that you would talk to only the legislators. But kind of understanding the intricate spider webs of connections and whose support means what to who was also very important to us. And so we did spend time, with Jay and his team's guidance in identifying leaders and organizations outside of the legislature whose opinions matter inside of the legislature. And so that included, different levels of political leadership around the state. It included key industries that sort of lead the way in Arizona. And we were able to not only get their ear, get them to hear the model and get excited about it, but ultimately, as you'll see in a few minutes, endorse it actively, with us being able to use their individual name, their organization's name, and in many cases, quotes that indicated their support and why for what we were trying to do. So we have to think more broadly than I would have originally considered, and I just wanted to pass that tidbit along to you. So Lane, I think we're gonna do a little bit of small group discussion, and if you can set that up, that'd be great.
Yep, happy to. So if you notice up till now, really all we talked about was just finding and talking to and learning from and with the right people, building those relationships. We haven't even really talked about what we did or built or constructed. So, and I think that's the right way to go about it. In our experience, it's way more about the humans than it is about the stuff. Because if you get people who care about your cause, the stuff will kind of follow in a really positive way. So what we'd like to do is, I'm hopeful that everybody has the ability to pull up and look at your workbook. And what I think we're gonna, well, I know what we're gonna do is, I think let's just Danny, let's just split everybody in half, if that makes sense. And so before we do that though, let me just kind of give an overview of what we'd like to do. I'm gonna guess that once we get split in half, at least one of us is gonna have the ability to look at this workbook. The goal is not to complete it. It's not a contest. It's not going to be judged. You don't have to do anything with it if you don't want to. But what I know as an adult educator for 25 years is people learn differently, right? So some of you are all good with the auditory stuff. Some of you are going to need to write this stuff down. Some of you are going to need to socialize with each other and talk about this. So what we'd like you to do is think about the first section in this workbook, which I don't have the ability to share my screen, do I? I wonder if I should do that.
You didn't talk to Danny about that ahead of time, but
you can share. You can share, Lane.
Okay, how do I? Oh, I'm viewing. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not going to screw up the process. You will see that in your workbook, you've got this, kind of 4 subsets of the building relationships. That's what we want to focus on. So once you get into split into groups, we're just going to each take a little time. I want you to take 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes up front, and you don't even have to talk to anybody. Just make some notes, right? Everything we just talked about, how does hiring a lobbyist make you feel? What do you think your political climate is? What people do you know that are good at this? If you're really good at this government relations stuff, how would you get other people excited? How would you get other people in your community supported? So the first thing is, we go into these breakout rooms, just take 3 minutes or so and just make some notes about where you land in this relationship stuff. And then, because Katrina and I will both be in those rooms, we'll jump in and start a little conversation and just be prepared to talk about really anything you want to in relation to this. Namely, are you good at this already? And if so, what would you share? Or are you a newbie? And if so, what really would you need to help get started? So let's do that now. And we have, what do we have, like 20 more minutes? So let's get out of these break rooms in about 10 or 11 minutes. Is that cool? All right, Danny, fire away. I'll see where we land. Okay. View options. I'm still seeing Katrina's screen.
So Danny, if I want to move to the other room, can you move me? Is that how it would work? I can't hear you, Danny.
I can assign you to that room. I didn't assign either of you to a room.
Oh, I got you. So they're already in their room.
They're all in their rooms, yeah. So I mean, I think, especially Katrina, I think you can join if you want at the bottom, just where it says breakout rooms. And then the Lane, I'm not sure.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Do you happen to know if Trisha and Jay are in different rooms?
They are.
Good. So I'm just going to text. Well, send Katrina. Which one are you going to send Katrina to?
Doesn't matter, whatever one you want, or Katrina, you can join.
Well, I'm not, because I'm screen sharing, my interface is not working very well. So if you can,
Sure.
if you can send me somewhere, and then I would also say definitely pull us back in like 7 or 8 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
That's fine. Yeah,
I can do that.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so you're inviting me to go somewhere? Awesome.
There you go. It's not on a
Danny, are we all back together again?
Yep, you are all here.
Okay. So Lane, if you want to do a very quick debrief so we can move on to the next slide, that would be great.
Well, I think the debrief is going to have to be, hey, that was kind of interesting. I wish we had more time, but we have to be off the phone in like 5 or 10 minutes here. So I will say that what I said in our group is this tool is just that. It's a tool. It's a conversation starter, and we want to make sure it's more important to us to get you through the next 2 chunks of our process. If you have questions or anything, throw them in the chat, and we'll make sure we follow up with email answer to everybody after this is over. So I think the promotional materials tools slide is important to get to. So why don't you jump on that, Katrina?
Yep. So essentially there were 2 different things that we did to make sure that we had our compelling case made for why funding or support for the Excel Center was critical. And one was we relied extensively on the national office, the Excel Center National Office, and the materials and resources they have that include data from all the other organizations are fantastic. We also commissioned an economic impact analysis from a local economist, very well respected. He's the kind of economist that gets called onto the business talk radio shows when the economy is tanking or thriving, and he gets to do all the prognostication about what's coming next. And he designed an economic impact model to show with the state's investment in the Excel Center program, when would they not only get a full return on their investment, but what would they get after that as it went along. And so from those sets of data, we designed different tools, and each of these, again, was with coaching along the way from Jay and from the questions that we were hearing from folks. And, I'll actually give you some screenshots of them. Essentially, the tools are designed for different audiences. Ultimately, the way I think of it is different attention spans. We have folks who are going to read a 15-page economic impact analysis and like eat up every word, and they're hungry for it. And we had folks who, if we got them to read 2 out of the 10 like fast facts about an Excel Center, that would have been success. And so essentially what you're going to see here are just some screenshots. This isn't intended for you to be able to read the words because it'll be really too small. The takeaway I'd like you to hear is that if you feel like you want copies of these, if you want the original files so that you can edit and modify and address it to address, match it to address your target audiences, just let us know. We are very happy to share any of this with you. So the first thing we're looking at, this is just the cover page and the first page of a summary of the economic impact analysis.
Katrina, your screen, if you could share your screen again.
Oh, whoops. Okay. Sorry. That must have changed when we went into the rooms. So. Okay, did that work?
Yep.
Okay, so let me go back to what I was talking about. Sorry about that. So this is the economic impact analysis, just the first page in the summary. This was a very long document. Even the summary went from 15 pages to maybe 7 or 8. So still long, but definitely there were people who were very interested in seeing the harder, more tangible research. And I would say if you can't afford a full economic impact study from an outside, professional economist, go to your local university and make it a class project, because the data is there to design the economic models so that you can really kind of prove out why Excel centers matter in your local economy. The next thing we did, and again, this is an excerpt from it, is we essentially built a handout that's all about the coalition of supporters. So this is both the businesses, we had counted the number of individuals who had sort of raised their hand in our state computer system to say, I want one of these in our state. And then we crafted quotes from various leaders of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, Greater Phoenix Leadership. We have a quote here from Betsy Delgado, and the quotes go on a few other pages. And again, these are folks people would want to hear from. They are leaders, thought leaders in the community and in business. And this proved to be valuable along the way. It was also easy to email this particular leave behind for folks. So I mentioned the top 10 sheet. We were lucky if somebody would get through 2 or 3 bullets. We designed a top 10. I know that Jay made modifications to this along the way based on what we were hearing in our individual meetings with legislators. So you'll see what our sort of top 10 facts were here in Arizona. Feel free to take a version of this and match it to what you would need. And then we also designed a custom piece that was about why you should vote specifically for our bill in Arizona. Most of this is probably going to be a little too specific, but the general premise would certainly apply anywhere else in the country and to any other kind of leader you were talking to, even if it was a school board leader, about why support for something really should matter to them. So with those tools quickly covered, I'm gonna take Lane's one. He was supposed to jump in here and talk about how amazing our lobbyist is. I've done that enough. He really was the brains behind the operation. That's why it's another bullet here. And then what he helped us craft were the meetings with key targeted strategic legislators. So those are the ones who are gonna be the champions. Those are the ones who are on the fence. Those are the ones who voiced active opposition, but you think with the new data, you might be able to sway them. Right. They would be the ones leading decision-making committees of some sort. And the respected political party leaders, the most important ones, at least in your area. And then meet early and often. And I think, we didn't get it past the first time we tried to run through the legislature because we didn't start early enough. We didn't bring our technical support in soon enough. And ultimately, we started meeting with folks many, many months before the legislature even opened session. And then there were folks we met with 2 or 3 times, and that then the lobbyist would also run into and add in another mention. So they actually heard from us and about the Excel Center 3 or 4 or 5 times before it would even come to them, for a vote. So I want to be mindful of time. And I'll just jump really quickly to my pep talk so that we have time.
Can I just add something real quick, Katrina?
Oh, sure.
So just the kind of like learning objective, adult learning part of me. So we broke this down in the slides to match what's in the workbook. And, we went through obviously pretty quick here, but if you think about, starting with those relationships, this is a very kind of organic, emergent process, right? So you got to understand the environment, know who the people are you're dealing with, and then as kind of independent agents in that, your lobbyist, whoever you have working with you, you got to put your tool belt on and start using stuff, or you got to build things to use. So that's that whole second part of the workbook. And it was that slide that we talked about. We got the report for the economic analysis. We got the handout stuff. So now you got your people and you got stuff you can do with them. And then as it starts to kind of grow and emerge, it gets more, Katrina used the word strategic. Who are you gonna get this army of support to go out with the tools and engage with? And you start with all the legislators, and you start to feel like what groups are there, and they kind of bubble up, and eventually you're going to get to things like a committee in the House, a committee in the Senate, a city council meeting on a certain date. So, there's rhyme and reason to this. And the last thing I want to say is all that stuff is great and it sounds very linear. It's 100% non-linear. You're always going back to the drawing board. There's never a time when you're not building relationships. There's never a time when you might not need a different tool. There's never a time when you might not find yourself meeting with another group or a person. So that's kind of like, we wanted to chunk it out: relationships, tools, and actions. And that was our flow. And I think those were really, Jay helped us think through that to the point that we can articulate that now. So now I'll let you give your pep talk, Katrina. So
I'll do the quick version of a pep talk. I didn't think of the government as working for me, even though everybody says they do. But really, that helped a lot when I was sitting down and talking to people. Was we elected them to office. Their job is to learn about the things in the community that matter, either so they become passionate about it or because it's going to serve them well politically. And just remembering that they're people. So, as somebody who was definitely intimidated by the first dozen meetings, the more that I recognized they were just people with interests and passions of their own, and that I had a cool story to tell, the easier and easier it got. So there's my very short pep talk. We can definitely do, any questions and answers, and also if Jay, if there's anything you would like to jump in and share, now would be a great time to do that.
I'm happy to answer any questions. I think Katrina and Lane did a great job with putting this together, particularly in such a short amount of time. I'm particularly happy to hear Lane mention his learning from it, which is that this is not a linear process. That didn't come easily, so that was a big deal, is to understanding how many moving pieces there are in getting something like this done.
So I've seen, I actually said I wasn't good at looking at the chat, but I figured out how to do it. It looks like a couple people want to copy the presentation. Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure like last time, Danny, you guys will send out, everybody will get links to all the materials, right? And then, yeah, I think that's it. The pep talk part, I was like, why is Katrina going to do a pep talk? But it really was kind of like the slide that encapsulated almost what Jay had to say to me every time I went to go to the House of Representatives or the Senate with them. These people work for us. They have a job to do. They want to get reelected. Hopefully they also want to do some good service in the state. So it pays them to listen to what we have to say. And yeah, there's a little bit of ego stroking. There's a little bit of that. I mean, I can think of one like lunch we went to where I'm 100% sure the guy just wanted a giant big free lunch, and then he's like, oh, I gotta run. But you run into that stuff. And then there's also times where when you know your stuff and you find a cool niche, you'll talk to somebody that you didn't think was even interested, and they'll end up being like talking your ear off for a half hour about it. So it is also a job that introverts can do. I know it sounds very extroverted, but you don't always have to be on all the time. I find that once that interaction happens, and I'm not saying I'm an introvert because I'm the furthest thing from it. Once it happens though, you can come back and you can digest and you can process, and there is time for reflection. Don't let anybody tell you that to do legislative work, you have to be an outgoing, extroverted person. It takes all kinds for success. So Katrina, is there anything, well, if anybody has a question, let us know now. And other than that, Katrina, is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap it?
There is one question. Yeah, there is a question that came through the chat from Katie. It said, how much of your time is spent building these relationships?
Well, nearly 100% of my time for 4 months, the 4 months of time that we had before COVID shut us down, was spent either building Jay was building the relationships, I supported him, but in actually doing the meetings and keeping up with it, or building the materials that would inform the relationships. So it was a very dedicated effort. I mean, I would go with you would need at least a person half-time dedicated to be able to pull it off.
I think Katrina, in her typical way, is being a little humble here. So I'll jump in on that. It's all pretty much relationship building, and some of the outside relationships can be the most influential, but take the longest to build. And Goodwill has enormous existing relationships that can be leveraged. So there is a lot of work that happens by the Goodwill team and the Goodwill staff. So one, working with the board, identifying their relationships, reaching out to community partners that are out there and finding those engagement points with folks who already have a familiarity, a comfort, and support for Goodwill, and making each of those a champion. So it is really an extraordinary effort to build those relationships, but that's what moves the needle at the Capitol.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that real quick is that relationships happen outside the legislature very quickly, because this is a cool idea, and you start going to fundraising events, cocktail parties, other things, and people are like, oh, that's amazing. I'm a teacher. Can I come work there? That's amazing. My husband does, you know, economic blah, blah, blah. He'll do something for you for free. And then, so Katrina had this juggling act of the formal legislation stuff, build those relationships, but then also we literally had people knocking on our door saying, when is this going to open? When are you hiring? How can I be a part of it? So to say the Excel Center kind of sells itself is almost an understatement. I think we all know it's an amazing model, and we look forward to a time when we're talking about this as a proven model, because we actually have the freaking Excel Center in Arizona.
Well, I know we're out of time. Thank you everybody so much for engaging with us. Thank you, Jay, for everything you did that got us to the point of this entirely unproven presentation about government relations in Arizona. And I'm happy to send anything anybody's looking for. I believe you all have our email addresses, and I'm happy to send anything you need.
Yep. All right. Danny, are we good? Anything else we have to do here?
You are good to go. Thank you very much, guys, for your time, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day and some of the after sessions.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.